All right, Veracruz, the story so far. After a relatively uneventful capture of Veracruz itself, the U.S. tried to push down the highway. They got slammed by Santa Ana and driven back. And then they have made a couple of not very effective battles. We have the list of them going down here, where they've been continuously either beaten and oops, their morale and the Mexican morale no longer reflect the situation. I had to move that. -2 and +2. They've been beaten in a couple of significant battles and driven back down the highway. Then from here, they tried to chase after the weaker Mexican army. They were trying to pursue a weaker army while they were, diseased and whatnot, and they've gotten hammered. Things do not look good for the U.S. On the other hand, it's election time in Mexico City, and Santa Ana might decide that he has to take a significant amount of his army and march down to help persuade the voters with said army. Campaigning is a little funny in Mexico. Okay, so here we are on turn 10. This is the first turn of a series where Santa Ana has to roll. I think it's on a 1 or 2 that I got a problem. Yeah. Otherwise, I can just keep pursuing the Americans. Go home, gringos! Oh, no. Now I have to make the decision of, do I just dispatch 20 strength points? Or do I try to, do something that can do something with this secondary army? I could actually dispatch 2 armies and try to protect both routes still. That might not be a bad idea. Except I'm only allowed 2 armies total. And I believe Santa Ana has to take an army with him, doesn't he? He must take at least 20 effective strength points, not including militia. He does not have to take an army with them. That's interesting. So I decided to make things easier for the Americans. I split the force, protecting both sides. I sent Santa Ana on his own for his political campaign. The artillery all has to stay within the armies. I've split them about equally. A little bit more strength on this, but whatever. Just because, why not? I don't know what to do with this leader. He's just booting around. But the Army of Mexico is under Morales here. Is this really Cardozo? I think it is. It's hard to tell. There may be a listing in the rules, but my eyes aren't good enough. And I guess that'll put it over to the U.S. side, and we'll see if they try to take advantage of this situation. I wanted to point out some Fifth Frontier War counters making it into the game, just so that I have things that I can use as percentage and effective markers. I don't feel like I need anything else yet. It'd be the best situation for the Americans to win a battle, so I'm able to actually attack in either direction. So I'm going to go odd even. It actually really doesn't matter. There's a little bit more on the highway though. Alright, so we're going to attack up this way. We did spend one of these supplies, and we march up. The rest of our horses have moved, our mules have moved down here to handle things, and we've got a battle again. The thing I gotta say about this combat system, it makes me play it out on video, which I don't know if that's good or bad. It's kind of boring in a way, but it's kind of the most exciting thing in the game, right? But unlike, say, Empires in Arms or EU, where I've got a detailed combat process, but it's detailed enough that I feel like I have to cope with more than I do here. I don't know if I actually do. This has a lot of different little die rolls and everything. but I feel like they operate pretty easily in terms of the mental mechanical stuff. So I can just babble on while I'm on video. Anyway, we got an attack coming up here. U.S. has 34 strength points. The Mexicans have 27. They're at -3. U.S. is at -7. So that means we're looking at 27 to 24. That sounds like 1-to-1. Things are not going well for the U.S., right? But this may be my only chance, is facing like a third of the Mexican army at once. Otherwise, right now I'm in such a serious disadvantage that I probably can't win the game with the Veracruz invasion. But I probably can't anyway. You know, you might look and say, oh, look, there's a bunch of reinforcements coming. Yeah, there's also a bunch of volunteers that are going to be withdrawn. I may actually be down and lose a division because of this. Very shortly, I may be at the point where I can't keep a volunteer division in the field. It's pretty close right now. I think I've got one more battle in me before that happens. So, first thing, battle morale. U.S. at -2. A 2, I get no bonus whatsoever. And for the Mexicans at +2. Which gives them their big +2 morale here. Which means, you know, they take less losses as well. There's things I like about this system. There's no question about that. And I do, you know, at first I was saying, hey, it's so finicky. It's got so many little die rolls and everything. But I'm always kind of turned on by that kind of thing. And I am beginning to see where it would be very difficult to express what is actually going on without all these different charts and die rolls. Effective leadership. U.S. is on the 3 table again. And this time they get a point. So we're at +3 there, or +1 there. And the Mexicans are a 2. And they get a -1. All right. So we're at +1, +1, even over there. It looks like it's even with a -1 to the die roll on the 1-to-1 table. But that's not going to be nice. That's an RD3, A-1. There goes the U.S. morale. You would kind of think that the U.S. would just sort of eventually just collapse here. But let's take a look at the losses. We are on the No, we're on the 0 battle morale. Oh, we did good, man. We did good. 0 battle morale, but we take a 3 loss, which is going to be 4. We're going to lose 10% of what we had. We had 27. That means we lose 3. The sick guys can't get hurt. And then for the Mexicans, now I can't remember. They're at an A1. They'll be advancing. They are on the +2 morale table and take nothing. After retreats and advances, we have this. We get a demoralization for the U.S. This was during their turn, which means their targets never want to attack, man. Never want to attack. Now the Mexican army can combine and rip you a new one. Not good. Yeah, I think the U.S. has lost this war. You know, I mean, look, a failure at Veracruz doesn't mean the U.S. lost the war. You still got Taylor coming in, right? It's Taylor? Yeah. You still got Taylor coming in from the north. And technically, yeah, I mean, he's going to be able to bring enough of a force that Mexico just can't hold out. This is why Halls of Montezuma is maybe a a more hopeless situation, because what this is this is Scott's invasion of Veracruz, which was kind of done on a shoestring and was kind of an amazing success. But the U.S. had so much capability, but they wouldn't have gotten anywhere near the land that they took if they got thrown back at Veracruz. And in fact, maybe the U.S. would tire of the war if they had to slog through the deserts in the north. All right, where are we? We're on the next turn, which is going to be another disease turn. Do I want to play it? Yeah, let's smack another U.S. Army. So Santa Anna was able to return back and move up to the Perote region. We've got some reinforcements coming, but the big thing is the fight here. We're attacking a demoralized force, which means -2 on the morale table. No chance of anything getting better, although at this stage it was pretty bad anyway. But it's the fact that I have to count up all the forces, and it's not a trivial task. It's a pain in the ass. So I do a lot of that, and then I'm like, well, from there on, it's pretty easy. So we got 55 for the Mexicans and 31 for the U.S. That goes down to 49 to 25. Just missed 2 to 1. It's 3 to 2 though. Battle morale. U.S. is at -2 for being demoralized. The Mexicans have a +3 on their table, which doesn't work very well for them. I'll put this. And then leadership is our standard level 3 for the U.S. If I could just get Worth in charge, but the volunteers have to have their own general. That's a +1. And the Mexicans are at 2, also with a +1. Okay, that means we have 2 shifts in the Mexicans' favor, and armies are fine. So we go up to the 3 to 1 table. This is, well, we're crossing a river here. We had to do that. So still at -1 for terrain. With a 4, we get an A2, F2. So the U.S. is again bashed back. Losses. Both sides take 2. Over here for the U.S. first. They're going to take 10%, which will be 3. And then all the way over here, they take nothing again. It's an F, so it's like a 3-die retreat. 7, 10 hexes. I'm allowed to stop in Veracruz, so that's where we'll head. One more volunteer lost, and there can no longer be a division for volunteers. They're going to have to be pulled out and used as a regular unit. It's not that big a deal. It's like as long as 75% of your force is divisional, you get the benefit for that. But if I hadn't just started another video, I would be saying it's time to pack it in. But I guess we'll see a little bit more of the bitter end here. That puts it on the U.S. turn. There's not a hell of a lot to do there. I can't fight. I just cannot. I think I'm going to get it sieged over here. I don't have cannons. Oh, we've been forgetting to move this forward. I don't remember where this stops. I don't think it goes up to 15. I think it only goes to 10. So I'm well above it anyway. But let's get our supplies. 4, we get 1, and a horsey. Not that it's going to fucking help us at all. We're in supply. We get our morale back. And it's time for disease. Okay. Let us start checking people. This Mexican force here, both these armies, They are one force, which is at even. They get a 5%. Okay, I have one. His force is behind the line, so it's at -2. He gets his 10%. Leave that there, I guess. And then the U.S. force is at +1 for being east of the fever line, but in Veracruz itself, which gives them a 20%, so they stay the same. And that is the end of turn 11. All right, we're gonna break for a bit, but yeah, it looks over. Oh, let's look up the fortresses. I'm worried this is gonna take me a while, and defensive strength is printed on the map. Okay. Yeah, so this has a number in it, which I think is 10. I can't be sure. But that's as far as Veracruz can go. And this other place, it's just, I don't know what it's there for. I really don't, you know. It's one of those things that Berg Game does, basically. Like, he'll make up rules for stuff that has no possible effect on play. So I'm not that worried about it, but I just want to point that kind of thing out. But yeah, it looks like the U.S. is going home with their tail between their legs. All right, so here on turn 12, beginning of June, Santa Anna got called back again. Some reinforcements joined him, coming from off board, just some of his militia. And then we're starting a siege of Veracruz. This does put the Mexicans in a bit of a dangerous spot. The Americans can potentially hit one of these forces and knock it out. And if they're successful, the other one, it could counterattack, but it might not, you know, it would be a situation of half the Mexican army again hitting the U.S. Now, half the Mexican army is about the same size as the U.S. Army, has better morale, has almost as good a leadership. So, you know, I feel like I can get away with it. So for the siege, let's look for my artillery. I have 6 here. And 8 here. So I have 14 artillery that I'm allowed to bombard with. That puts me on this table. I get 2 hits on Veracruz, and it won't be going up while it's under siege. At least that's how I'm playing it. And now we have no artillery. Oh, we have the 6-point artillery there. So we actually have a counter battery of 14. And that's how you can get to this 17 is additional artillery being there. So a 5 or a 6, I managed to get rid of a strength point. I'm going to look that up, make sure that that doesn't have to be artillery, because I would rather not lose artillery. It does not have to be. Now, here's the thing. The rules as written, rebuilding fortress. Once a fortress whose rating has been reduced is occupied by the opposing player, its rating may be built back up again. Each fortress adjusts 2 points per full game turn of occupation to its fortress, even if it is left unoccupied. Adjust the track markers. It can never be built higher than its original rating. All right. So as written, the Mexicans would have to lose the fortress for the rating to go up. So the US took it. They started rebuilding the rating. They got it up to 10. I'm not sure what happens after that. Like, as written, now that I reach 10, am I allowed to rebuild it still? Because I did conquer it once? And from now on, like, if the Mexicans retake it, will they be able to rebuild it? It would kind of make sense to me if only the Americans could rebuild it, or if it just couldn't be rebuilt. That's not how the rules are written. That's also not how I'm going to, how I'm going to play it is that once it's under siege, it can't rebuild. And it can rebuild at any point that the siege is left off. I feel like that makes more sense. It's not what's written there. What's written there just doesn't make sense. And the errata for this game is really sparse. It does not include that. Okay. On to the US. The US has one unit which is capable of doing reconnaissance. Somewhere in here, I've got the engineers, presumably Robert E. Lee, etc. I will not be able, actually I will be able to scout both, or to multi-scout. So the way the scouting works, it costs me like 2 movement points. Let me see if I can find them. There they are. So they got 8 movement points. It cost me something like 2 movement points to scout or to move to another hex. But I can't go directly to a zone of control. So I won't be able to. I'll be able to peek at one of these 2 stacks. I don't know how much help it's going to be. Let's randomize which stack I look at. We will look at the Army of the East, and I roll a die, and I get to look at twice as many. Okay, I get to look at the top 2 counters in there, and I don't get to look at those. Those are at the bottom, although I could have put them on the top. So there's a 1 and a 0 there. I'm going to go after the Army of the East because I feel like it's the weaker, especially after seeing that. It's the one over here, and I'm going to hit it. And you might say, geez, man, you're not very good at attacking stuff. Why are you doing this? Well, I got to win battles to get my morale up. I cannot fix it in any other way. There's nothing else that's going to help my morale. Things are not going to get better than they are right now. Yeah, I know. I'm facing 5% to 20. Maybe the next disease round things will get better. But there's a constant flow of Mexican units, which is at least as big as what's coming in for the, or is about as big as what's coming in for the US. And the US is going to lose the rest of their volunteers, basically. So, yeah, in fact, they're going to lose them when? It's got to happen next turn. So yeah, this is pretty much my last chance, as far as I can see, to prevent Veracruz from just being besieged and taken that way. And there's not a hell of a lot I can do. If I surrender Veracruz, I can go back up here. Unless the Mexicans go take that. All right. He may relocate all non-militia units to another city. I may have taken militia with me. That's a bad cheat. Artillery, militia, supply units, and pack animals are all eliminated if they surrender. They may not relocate. But they have to go to another city. I actually did cheat. I pushed out to a town, not a city. The Mexicans would have had to go back as far as Pueblo. I don't know if that would have made much difference. because I feel like I pushed forward and controlled the roads a little closer too early. And that means the U.S. has absolutely nowhere that they can relocate to. They just abandon the invasion. Presumably they get on ships and leave Veracruz, and that's how they surrender. So yeah, I mean, the only thing I think I can do is try to break the siege this way. And so we will hit the Army of the East. And because we want to show the whole battle, counted up the strength points, 25 strength points with a -5 of that for the 20%, 27 strength points with a -1. Sounds like 1 to 2 so far. Base morale, -3 for the U.S. That gives them a -1 morale. Not as bad as possible. I mean, as bad as they could get as the U.S. without being demoralized. And for the Mexicans, a +3 to their roll gets them up to a +2. I don't have to do anything to be in general supply. I don't believe these can help in terms of fire. Even if I was heading for this space, they are only allowed to bombard the cities. Which feels a little funny. Like, I feel like this is a situation that's just not supposed to happen. Like, I should be able to get these extra gun points in. Let me just make sure. Because that extra 2 points would actually get me up to... No, it wouldn't help. Screw it, man, then. Okay. Although I could take them as losses and they come back. So maybe I ought to check. But let me get the leadership values first. Still +3 for the U.S., which gets me a +1. Sorry for the shakiness when I change hands. It's painful. And when I roll dice. And for the Mexicans, not too good. They're getting a -1. So that means Mexico is going to be at only +1, or 1 column shift in their favor, which would take us from 1 to 2 down to the worst column in the game. If it's 1 to 1, it gets a little better, but this did not work out well so far. Let me, well, let's just roll. I'll check the artillery later. All right, let's see what we got here. We are attacking in the clear. On the worst column. 5. RD -2, H -2. Okay, so the U.S. is going to be demoralized again. Their morale can't get any worse. There's no such thing, man. Morale can't get any worse should mean surrender. But that would be if I got a retreat result. Because they got nowhere to go. I'm not allowed in here. Okay. And what did we say? RD2, H1. So the U.S. are at 2 on the -1 table, not the -2. We lose 5%, which should be, that's 20%, which should be 1. Sorry. And the Mexicans were at a big +2 morale on the 1 table. They also lose 5%, so both sides lose 1. Anything else happening here? I get to I check the gunboats and see if I could have used them. I got an RD. I'm destroyed. That's the end of the game, man. And I mean, it was gonna end anyway, right? I mean, the siege would eventually succeed. Veracruz would fall. The U.S. is done. Wow. So I definitely had a little bit of a screw up in terms of the withdrawal from Veracruz, the initial units that were there. Some of them were militia, there's no question. Got the Veracruz militia, that's a 1 strength point. That's it. So 1 strength point should have been destroyed that wasn't. I don't think that has any effect. The initial force would have been thrown back all the way to the city here, which is just me misreading things. Otherwise, I think I got it okay in terms of getting the rules right as I played them. Trying to think, you know. Sure, the U.S. didn't have to push forward when they did, but they're under this weird sort of time limit trying to get some ground before the volunteers leave. So I feel like I did the right thing in attacking with them. And I feel like really it's just luck that did me in. You know, I had advantages. I was not at a disadvantage with the first attacks I was making here. But once you get kind of on the ropes in this game, it's real hard to get away from the enemy and stuff like that. Because, okay, you get an initial jump away with your retreat movement, and for the Mexicans, they can give up a lot of ground and let the U.S., you know, make up a lot of that ground. But very quickly, if you lose this, sure, you've got this little speed bump here, which you could keep as a speed bump. There's no such speed bump here, but the movement's a little bit slower. So maybe you get a chance to fight again here, and then fight again in front of Mexico City. But you really kind of have to, you have to give up a lot of ground each time your army gets defeated. If you don't give up a lot of ground, you're subject to being pursued and smacked around harder. For the U.S. with the coast behind them, they can't afford to lose a battle. And there's a fair chance that they will lose a battle. And I think it's at about that, you know, 45% chance, right? And once they lose one, what can they do? Well, they could hide in Veracruz. They could hide in Veracruz, and I think that's where I went wrong. I don't know. I really don't know. And again, those the early follow-up battles that I did after I had lost my initial advantage, those actually weren't that bad because I had the Mexican army split. So I think I had a chance there too. I just got a sequence of not particularly good results here. And we can look at my numbers here. At this fight we won. This one we outnumbered them. We were outnumbered here and beaten up. This was a Mexican attack. Here we had close to 2-to-1 odds. Here close to 2-to-1 odds. I mean, and as our morale kept going down, there was no opportunity to like try to regroup and improve our situation. The only thing we could do is get rid of the demoralization, and then it's like, yeah, we're facing this lousy morale situation, and we can't do anything about it except win a battle that maybe we're less likely to win. But since we lost a couple, we were unlikely to lose. Seems like it was a fair shot at it. I actually enjoyed this more than I thought I would. And the thing I want to point to the most is the combat system, which I thought I would be really pissed off about how, you know, mechanically taxing it is, etc. But when it comes down to it, it gives me that level, maybe especially because I have to write down the combats and the valuations. That always seems to please me somehow. I wasn't expecting it to here because I'm just rolling the dice rather than, making this comparison and watching the morale drop the way that it does in Empires in Arms. But I do feel like it gave me added information about what's going on in the battle that a single roll on, a more complex CRT wouldn't do. Now, there are games like the Operational Combat Series, which give you kind of not really a single roll, but not as complex a mechanism, and I still feel like they give you an interesting story in terms of what's going on, that give you some insight into that story, right? You don't have to make everything up based on, oh, look, I got an attacker eliminated, It's also nice because a lot of the games of this era were using sort of that base SPI combat system, which would allow you to, it wasn't quite as bad as the Avalon Hill one with attacker eliminated, defender eliminated, whatever. It would have retreats and whatnot, which allow you to like maneuver and defeat units by getting a positional advantage on them. But that wouldn't really apply at the scale that this game was designed for. So I actually am pretty happy with what the combat system represents. Anyway, a lot of luck in it, but it definitely showed some interesting stuff. And I'll load this up. Most of the way through the rules of Plantagenet, it is the least like the rest of the Levian campaign series so far. Like, it's changing core rules over stuff that you're familiar with, from the other games in the series, and it's like, oh boy, it's beginning to feel more and more like when you look at kind of your traditional hex encounter games, and I'm talking about more not this, which feels pretty traditional to be honest in a lot of ways, but it has this different combat system and everything. I'm talking more like those World War II Avalon Hill ones, and I'm looking for them. I got them in here. Yeah, Midway, no. Battle of the Bulge there, Anzio, stuff like that. That all kind of share very similar type of systems, but there are significant, important differences in how they operate. And you can take kind of the same sort of thing with like, well, the concept of CDG or the concept of a coin game. It feels to me like with Plantagenet, the Levian campaign has moved far enough outside of, yeah. I mean, coin is sort of designed so that the base system is like, the idea of hex movement grid, fight on a CRT, on a simple odds ratio, stuff like that. It feels like it's about that level, and the rest, every single game has its own set of operations that you can do that's significantly different. Levian campaign doesn't quite feel that way. It feels like, the way the calendar's supposed to work, the way... Anyway, I'm just getting way ahead of myself, but it's part of why I'm having trouble getting to it. This is actually not a particularly complicated one, from what I can tell. It's just different. And it's like... and like with the CDGs, like with the coin games, I'm having to try to find those differences and understand them. Sure, there's little markers and whatnot in them within the context of a fucking GMT rulebook, which isn't the worst in the world by any means. GMT does a pretty good job given their core format, but their core format ain't like this. Another big thumbs up for Dunnigan, who understood the value of presenting things in the same way every time. All right, up this goes.